Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make cream puffs. A cream puff is a small mound of choux pastry that we split in half and fill with lots of whipped cream. So to begin, preheat your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 200 degrees Celsius. And you will need a baking sheet. And you can either line it with a piece of parchment paper like I've done here, or you could just lightly butter it or spray it with one of those non-stick sprays. Now to make choux pastry, this is a little different type of pastry. We are first going to cook it on the stove and then we are going to bake it in the oven. So to begin, just in a small bowl, place half a cup of, that's 65 grams, of white all-purpose flour, or you may know that as plain flour. And then add to that just half a teaspoon of granulated white sugar and 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And either whisk it like I'm doing here, or you could sift it together and just put that aside. And then in a saucepan, you will need a half a cup, that's 120 milliliters of just water, just plain water, and 1/4 of a cup, which is 4 tablespoons, 57 grams of butter. And have your butter at room temperature and cut it into small pieces like I've done here, because then it will melt faster. Because what we are going to do is bring the water to a boil. But what we want to make sure is that the butter melts before the water boils, because we don't want too much evaporation of the water, because that will affect the consistency of the dough. So just put it on medium-high heat and just stir it every once in a while and just bring your water to a boil. Okay, so our water is boiling. So just remove it from the heat, and then I like to use a wooden spoon. Just add all your flour all at once, and then just stir it. And you can see it kind of is a little bit of a mess here when you first add it. Just keep stirring. And then what we're going to do is put it back on the heat, medium heat. And we're just going to cook this, stirring all the time, for a minute or two until it becomes a nice smooth ball of dough that comes away from the sides of the pan. Because we want to get rid of a bit of the water to get a nice smooth ball of dough. So it'll come away from the sides and form a dough. And you'll probably notice a bit of a film of flour on the sides of the cooked flour on the sides and bottom of the pan. That's very normal. Just keep stirring. Because what we want is a little of the water to come out, so it will absorb. We're going to be adding egg, so it will absorb the egg nicely. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so there we have it, nice and smooth. So take that off the heat. And then if you have an electric stand mixer like I'm using here, just fit it with the paddle attachment, or you could use a hand mixer, or you could even do this by hand just with a wooden spoon in a bowl. Now what I'm going to do is just, we want to add some beaten egg to the dough. So we want to cool the dough down just a little till it's lukewarm. So you can just leave it in the bowl and let it cool off by itself, or what I'm going to do is just turn the mixer on low, and that way it'll cool, release the steam, and it will cool it down. And it only takes like a minute of having your mixer on low speed. Okay, so what you can do is just kind of feel it and just see, it's just nice and lukewarm. So what we're going to do is add we're going to take 2 large eggs, have them at room temperature, and just lightly whisk them, break them up. And we're going to add this slowly with the mixer running, and add the beaten egg. And then we're going to just keep beating until we get a nice smooth and thick paste. Now, you don't want to just have your mixer on, just add all the egg. You got to pay attention to what you're doing, because what we want is a nice, smooth, thick paste. So what I do is add most of the egg, and then I check the consistency, which I'll show you, because you don't want it too thin, you don't want it too thick, because we want a nice round, puffed, little mounds of pastry. So you have to add the right amount of egg. So what I'm going to do is have your mixer on. And what you'll notice is when you start adding the beaten egg, the dough will kind of come apart. And then just keep beating, just keep adding the egg, and then it'll come together and then form a nice thick paste. So don't worry if it starts to all break apart on you. So what I'm going to do is just, so I can kind of show you. See how it's kind of almost like little curds? So that's the way it's going to look. So I'm just going to keep beating. So again, I'm just going to show you the stages here so you'll know. See, I've added almost all of the egg, but see what it's like? It's still kind of rough. So I'm going to beat it a little more. I'm going to leave the little bit of egg I have left, and I'm just going to keep beating this till it smooths out a bit. Okay, so here we are at this point. Show you again. Now this is a little thick. See, it's kind of falling. We don't want it, we want it a little thinner than that. So I am going to add the rest of that egg. It's hard to know how much exactly because of your flour, and then when you cooked it on the stove, you don't know how much of the water evaporated, and that will affect how much beaten egg you add. So. Okay, let's just take a look at that. That looks good. So it did take the 2 eggs. See, we're kind of like, this is what you're looking for. Falls from the spoon, but or the beater, but kind of stays and then falls. Okay, so now I'll just you don't have to do this at home, but I'll just transfer it to a bowl so you can see what I'm doing here. So this, see, that's what you're looking for. Just takes a little practice, but you know what? Even if it's not perfect, they'll still taste great. So don't worry about it. So now, some people like to put the choux pastry in a pastry bag and then pipe the mounds. You can do that, and that way you make sure they're nice, perfect mounds. I'm just going to use 2 spoons. And we're going to do 12 mounds. So I'm doing 4 rows, 3 across. And just try to make them as round as you can. And space them a couple inches apart. Okay, so that's that. Simple enough. So now what we're going to do is brush the choux pastry with a little beaten egg white, or a little beaten egg. So what I have is just 1 large egg. Just with a wire whisk, or you can use a fork. This helps with browning and then nice gloss to their tops of our choux pastry. So then with a pastry brush, just brush. Now what you can do as you're doing this, you can kind of smooth out your pastry. It's the added benefit of doing this. Take your brush and if it's a little ragged, just you can fix up the look of your puffs here. You can see I'm doing. Okay, so now we're going to bake the cream puffs. Now the important thing is that first we're baking it at a high temperature so that the puffs will rise quickly, and that sets the structure. And then we're going to lower the heat and bake them for quite a while, and that will make the outsides nice and crisp and then dry out the insides. So 15 minutes at 400 degrees, and then drop your temperature down to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius, and bake them another like 30-35 minutes, or just until they're like nice amber golden color and nice and crisp. Okay, so our cream puffs, or our puffs I should say, they look done. As you can see, they're a really nice amber color. And what you're looking for is even with the cracks, those are also amber color. You don't want them white. But if you've ever made these puffs before, sometimes they look done, but they're not inside. You want them dry inside. So what I do at the end of, say, 30 minutes, and if they look done, what I do is break one in half. Now, once you've made cream puffs a lot, you may not have to do this, but especially at the beginning. So they're pretty dry, but there is a little bit, just a little. Now, if they were really wet inside, what I would do is put them back in the oven for another 5 to 10 minutes. Mine are just a little. So what I do is I turn the oven off, and then I'm going to take a sharp knife, and then I make a little cut either side, just about where you're going to cut them in half to split them to fill with cream. And then what I'm going to do is put them back in the oven with the oven turned off, with the door slightly ajar, and I'm going to let them cool in there, and then they'll continue to dry out so that the insides will be nice and dry. But you want to make sure that you cook these long enough, because some people have emailed me about they take them out and then they flatten. And that's if you have not baked them long enough. Now, if you find they over brown as you're like before the 30 minutes is up, if you find that they are browning too much, just turn your oven down. Because maybe your oven's a little hot. I mean, everybody's oven is so different. Got to kind of work with it. So I'm going to put them back in the oven and just let them cool off in there with the door slightly ajar. So now, while our choux pastry is cooling, we're going to get our cream ready to be whipped. So in your mixing bowl, place 1 cup, that's 240 milliliters of heavy cream. Make sure it's heavy cream or heavy whipping cream. You may know that as double cream. And that's cream that when we beat it, it will whip to stiff peaks. And then I'm going to sweeten it. I like about 1.5 tablespoons of granulated white sugar. You could use powdered sugar as well. And because I like my cream quite sweet for cream puffs, You could vary that more or less. And then I'm going to add just a half a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, just give a little flavor. So really what we're making is chantilly cream. And then just stir that to mix everything together. Now I'm doing this ahead of time because what we're going to do is put the mixing bowl, the cream, and our wire whisk in the refrigerator. Now you want to do that for at least 15 minutes, chill it for at least 15 minutes, or you can do it a few hours. Because if everything's cold, if our bowl is cold and our wire whisk and everything, the cream will beat better to nice stiff peaks. So I'm just going to put this in the fridge to chill. So now we're ready to fill our cream puffs. So first you need to cut them in half. So just take a sharp knife and just go like so. Cut all the way through. Now if you find that there's still a little moist dough, if there's a little, don't worry about it. Just with your fingers or the knife, just remove that and just put it aside. And they'll be fine. And then, cream puffs need powdered sugar on top. You may know that as confectioner or icing sugar. So just put it in a small strainer, and I like lots. So just like so. There you go. And then we need to whip our cream. So make sure if it's, as I said, it should be, you should chill your bowl and your whisk for about 15 minutes at least. And then I'm just going to beat it on medium-high speed until stiff peaks. Okay, there we have nice stiff peaks. That's what you're looking for. So now, a few things. Some people, if you want your cream puff to have a really crisp, the pastry to be really crisp, then I would fill the cream puffs just shortly before you're going to serve. Now, personally, I like to fill them a couple hours before, because I like the pastry to soften just a little. Now that's just a personal choice. So if you want to do that the way I like them, I just probably about 2 hours before I'm going to serve, I fill them and then I just put them in the fridge. So either way. Now I like lots of cream, so just take the bottom half and just fill it with cream. You can just do it with a spoon, and as much or as little as you like. And just put the top like so. Or if you want to get a little fancy, you can, I've just put in a star tip into a pastry bag. This is just a disposable plastic one. You could even just use a Ziploc bag as well. And then I'll just put some cream in there. Push the cream down. You want to get the air out of your pastry bag, and then just twist. See? And again, get a little more fancy, as you can see. That. Sometimes I like to put even like some raspberries or slices of strawberries in there. That's always very nice. And there you go. Cream puffs. So until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.